Hi everybody, it's John back again with another model in box review. As you can see in front of you, you have, yes, it's a warship. But this particular warship in the UK is one of the most famous warships that's still afloat today. She's actually HMS Belfast, and she at present lies in the Pool of London, just down from uh, Tower Bridge. And she's a very, very good attraction. Anyone ever got any time to go down and have a look at this ship? It's part of the Imperial War Museum. She's a museum ship. It's a very, very good day out. Well worth it. But she isn't in this guise. I'll show you an image of the ship in the modern guise as she lies in it. This is the pre-1953 refit state. And this image is actually a picture of the ship, which is quite poignant actually, because she's just about to leave Scapa Flow on her way down to her duties off the Normandy beachheads, because HMS Belfast was one of the four major capital ships that the Royal Navy sent down to support the landings on Juno, Sword and Gold beaches. The Americans, of course, had ships of their own to support the landings on Utah and Omaha, but the Royal Navy, they basically sent ships down to support the landings with barrages on the Commonwealth beaches, and there were a number of them. So that's a nice image of Belfast there, lying ready to go. I think this picture was taken on around about the 2nd of June 1944. She was still being got ready for a trip down south off the north coast of France. So anyway, that's HMS Belfast image. We'll go straight into the boxing history. The kit we're actually looking at today is the Airfix 1/600 scale HMS Belfast. And we'll kick off with the boxing history. The kit was actually originally released in 1973, and this is actually the format of boxing that I actually bought first when I was about, I'm trying to think how old I was. I think I'd have been about 8, I think, when I bought this kit. And I kept her in my stash, because in those days I had not a massive stash, but I probably had about 25 kits in a stash, and I kept this kit until I was about 12 or 13 years old, probably 13 years old, until I built it. But it was the new release, 1973 release, on the Type 4 boxings that were released at that time. Can you see you've got adverts on the sides of the ship there? That's HMS Ajax and Suffolk, and on the back, I can't remember what was on the back, but I think it was 3 adverts for Series 4 ships. I'm pretty sure one of them was Hood, but I can't remember what the other 2 were. So that's 1973 boxing. That was the year HMS Belfast was first released by Airfix. The second release, this is another Type 4 boxing, but obviously without the new sticker stuck all over the front. This was 1974. I think Belfast was released quite late in the year in 1973, and the kit was introduced into the market with a new style of boxing without the new sticker on, but it's still a Type 4 boxing. Note the logo, the Airfix logo there is actually in blue and yellow, which was quite common for that sort of era of boxings for Airfix at the time. So that's 1974. That lent way to 1977. 1977 was when the boxings for Airfix logos were planetoid. They were quite oblong in shape, but they did go to the red and white and black colour schemes, which were they were mainstay from now on. 1977, this is a Type 5 boxing, went through to 1982, and this of course is the planetoid boxing, and yes, they did release ships on the blueprint style boxings made up, and it gives you an idea of what the detail is on this particular kit. The detail on this particular kit is very worthy of note. It's incredibly detailed, very, very accurate and highly detailed kit for Series 4 1/600 scale warships. Belfast was probably one of the best. 1982, that was the Palatoy Mattel rendition. Then 1994 came up, and Hella released this kit in this style of box when Hella owned the company. New style of box with a skill box panel on the bottom right hand corner, I think this is a Type 7 or it might be a Type 8 box. I can't honestly remember. But 1994 was a transition period where there were no borders. Lots of the models' artwork was across the entire box lid, and the boxes had no lids. They opened up at one end, and I think that format has carried on over right to the present day. So that's 1994. 1994 went through to 1994 box starter sets, and Airfix started to release a lot of models in starter sets with Humbrol enamel paints and a brush. And these starter sets, when they came out in around about the mid-90s, they were actually quite good because the paints were regular run-of-the-mill enamel paints and they were very good. I know a lot of people don't seem to have issues with the new acrylic starter set paints that they get in the Airfix ones, but I just find them a total waste of time. Complete waste of time. They're terrible, terrible paints to use. So 1994 starter set goes through to 1997, and this is actually the boxing that I've got of HMS Belfast to build the kit from at present. It actually was a form of a starter set, and that little blue panel package in there, including the acrylic paints and the poly cement, also included a brush, which I've actually got on this kit, but this image doesn't seem to show it for some reason. And I think this was the largest box that HMS Belfast ever appeared in as an individual kit. 1997 went through to 2003. This is another starter set, including acrylic paints and two brushes and a small poly cement. Sorry about that. And this was the first boxing release for the Imperial War Museum, ticketed on the side. They were sponsored by the Imperial War Museum for sales in their museum shops. And I think they did quite well with Belfast. That's 2003 release. 2005 went through to the last style of boxing that Hella released this kit on. Notice how the image of the ship has never changed since day one. The image of the ship is still used on the present boxings of the kit's releases now from Hornby, and you'll see those soon in a minute. 2005 also, I quite like this box where it had a swerving sort of a swathe going through the image of the picture there, and then you had all the information on the ship there. The scale and the model subject name and the serial number there. It was all there, you know. So that's 2005. 2005 went through to another release. This is the Airfix VE Day commemorative set, which celebrated 60 years of VE Day, and it was released in 2005. And HMS Belfast is the ship kit that's featured in this particular set. There's another kit that I'll be doing an inbox review on, which is also featured in this set, and that's the Churchill tank. I'll be doing an inbox review on that next as well. So that's 2005 VE Day release. 2008 you had another release of a starter set, which included a brush, some poly cement, and 6 acrylic paints there. I have seen this particular boxing released. I've seen it in the shops, and I've actually had a hold of one of these, and it's quite a sizable box, but it's not as big as the one that I've got. It's a shorter box. I think the hull and decks fit into this particular box a lot more snugly. The box that I've got is quite a bit longer than the actual ship's hull. So that's 2008. Then you go into the modern day Hornby products releasings, and this is the Imperial War Museum 1/600 scale HMS Belfast from Hornby that was released in 2014. The kit now has a serial number of A04212, and there's a nice image there on the side of the ship built up, and she really is a nice smart looking ship. 2014 also went to 2015 when Hornby released the starter set. It's basically a carbon copy of the original starter set from earlier in that decade, but this has the red border around the box, which always looked better than the blue one in my opinion, and that awful reddy sort of orangey coloured thing. It wasn't great, but this I quite like the red borders on the boxes. You know, it makes the kit stand out in the model shops quite well. So that's 2015. There's also one more, the 2018 release. This is under the guise of the Vintage Classics series, where Hornby Productions have released a lot of Airfix kits that were ancient old moulds. And I don't consider this kit to be an ancient old mould. It is an old mould, but as far as Airfix is concerned, it was released in the early to mid 70s. And in my opinion, it didn't suffer from a lot of the older moulding techniques used by Airfix prior to 1970. This kit is really, really well moulded and nice, and you'll see that in the parts when we go through them. So that's the boxing history right from 1973 to 2018. Kit's been on the shelves for quite a while now. I just want to leave you a nice image here. This is HMS Belfast in 1945, I believe, just after the VJ celebrations. And she's in Sydney Harbour there. And she has a different colour scheme. And this was the colour scheme that she wore in Korea. What's interesting and worthy of note is that Belfast didn't carry the same colour scheme throughout her history. She actually was originally launched in 1937, I believe, and she wore her North Atlantic grey coat scheme that most Royal Naval ships wore right up to about 1941, late 1941, and then she was camouflaged prior to her inclusion in the events around Boxing Day of 1942, when, or was it, sorry, 1943, when she was engaged against the Scharnhorst, along with 3 or 4 other cruisers of similar size and HMS Duke of York. But she wore a different camouflage scheme after the war. You can see that she has got a camouflage scheme, but it's not as splinter-like. It, and the gun turrets are all the same colour. The funnels are all the same colour as the rest of the superstructure, but there were a few dazzles, panels on the side of the hull. So anyway, that's a look at how the ship looked like after World War II finished. I just want to quickly show you before we go into the inbox review fully. There are a couple of options for HMS Belfast, and they're quite interesting. The options, obviously, you got the Airfix kit, but you've also got this kit from Trumpeter. Now, this particular kit is 1/700th scale, and this particular version of the kit is HMS Belfast from 1942. So this would have been around about the time. This would have been a camouflage scheme going into the Battle of the North Cape against the Scharnhorst. But the other thing that's interesting about the Trumpeter options is that they also do this kit, which is a 1/700th scale, HMS Belfast circa 1959. And this is a model of HMS Belfast, and I'm pretty sure it's the only model of HMS Belfast that's an injection moulded form that you can get as she is now. The problem is that the 1/700th scale ship kits from Trumpeter are not available for purchase yet, but they are coming soon in 2019. So if you fancy building a model of Belfast in a modern guise, the Trumpeter kit is the only option in 1/700th scale. But Trumpeter also do this kit in 1/350th scale. This is HMS Belfast in 1942. This is similar colour schemes to when she went to the Battle of North Cape, but I don't think it's the exact colour scheme that she wore when doing the support role at the D-Day landings. And what is interesting is that I've seen pictures of HMS Belfast actually engaging in her role in D-Day, and she wears the same camouflage scheme as the Airfix kit portrays in the instructions. And it is identical, absolutely identical. She had the darker grey upper turret mounts, she had the splinter scheme. The modern day hull of Belfast actually wears a similar splinter scheme on her hull, but her upper surfaces are different. They're slightly different. It's like they've tried to marry two worlds. But this is the 1/350th scale. In my opinion, this is probably the best option for an HMS Belfast kit that you could probably opt for, but it ain't cheap, as you'll find later in the conclusion, in the options and costs when I go through the gumph on the kit. Right, just to show you what the ship looks like now, this is an image of HMS Belfast in the Pool of London, and she has a substantially redesigned forward superstructure, and her original masts have been changed for these lattice masts, as they call them. These are similar in design to the ones that were found on the Swiftsure class cruisers, i.e. HMS Blake, HMS Swiftsure and HMS Tiger. Very similar in concept. So that's actually the boxing history done and the options that are available. I just want to pan the camera around very quickly now to show you the kit itself, because the kit itself is really, really worth looking at. There we go. I'll just pull this in slightly so you can get a better image. There we go. This is the kit we're looking at. It's quite a large box. There's my hand in front of it. It's quite a large box. This is the largest box that was ever HMS Belfast was ever released in. And we'll just open the packaging very quickly. Now, I'm not a fan of starter kits from Airfix unless they were in the mid-90s. I'm certainly not a fan of the additional extras and odds and ends that you get in this particular kit. But yeah, and I'll just quickly go through that very quickly now. I'll just open the other end. And I just want to show you what you get in here, because this is interesting too. If I can get it out, which I think I can. There we go. I'm not going to pull it all the way out. I'm just going to show you what you get. You get four paints. Here, here, here and here. There's interesting that there's no matte black. So you can't do the plimsoll line, you can't do any of the gun ends or the funnel interiors or anything, but you've got a nice brush here. These Humbrol brushes I'm a big fan of. They're actually very nice. And these tubes of cement, although I know a lot of people don't like using tubes, they're some of the better tubes options available. So that's basically your accessories. As I said before, I'm not a great fan of the paints, but yeah, everything else is fine. You get a little pamphlet here as well. You got these quite a lot in the mid-90s and 2000s. They're just a safety guide, and it's written in lots and lots of different languages. It's an A4 sheet of paper. Yeah, we'll just put that back in the box, shall we? I don't think I'll be bothering too much with that. Now then, as is usual with my unbox reviews, we'll start with the instruction leaflet, and then we'll go through the parts in a minute. I have very briefly checked the parts. They're all here. That's why the bag is open. It's going to make things a lot easier. Anyway, this is a typical Airfix instruction leaflet from around about the turn of the noughties, 2000s. I think this kit was 2005 on there. Sorry, no, it was 1997. This kit was released in 1997. That's correct. Now then, on the front here you have the usual gumph, history of the ship, stats, a bit of its status and operational history, and it's in lots and lots of different languages there. I've always thought that's quite nice of Airfix. Airfix did that very nicely. The kit itself builds up in 24 steps. So you can see there's step 24, and step 25 is actually the paint guide. And I'm not going to go pedantically through the instructions, but there are a number of things that you have to build on this kit before you put the decks on. But basically, when you bought an older kit, if you've got an older kit from the 70s or the early 80s, you might find that you'll build lots of little sub-assemblies before you get to the hull and the rear deck. And there's a reason for that. Originally, Airfix wanted you to build things like, let me have a look, things like this walrus spotter plane which goes inside the hangar, the stands, things like the gun turrets. They all wanted them built as sub-assemblies prior to assembly onto the ship. But the first thing that I remember putting together when I built this kit first was this walrus spotter plane that actually went onto the catapult. And as you can see, it's parts 1 to 6. Now, I have had a number of comments on my videos stating that they thought the Airfix walruses and sea foxes that you got on their ships were terrible, inaccurate, and really badly reproduced. And what I'm going to tell you now is that seeing the one that you get on HMS Suffolk and seeing the Sea Fox that you get on HMS Ajax and a number of other moulded 1/600 scale aircraft on some of the Airfix carriers like HMS Ark Royal and Victorious, and even the Forrestal, I don't think their 600 scale models of their aircraft are actually that bad when you consider the size of them. They're about 4 mm long with a span of similar size. So you're not going to get an incredibly accurate aeroplane, an incredibly detailed aeroplane, but what you do get is a basis. And when they're painted up and you put like markings on them, they actually look really nice. They look relatively good. But what I'm going to do, I don't want to go on and on and on about various bits and pieces. I'm just going to quickly go through this plan. You've got more safety and advisory instructions here in lots and lots of different languages, and an assembly icon list there. It's a bit like teaching your granny how to suck eggs, isn't it? All you guys who've been building models for years and years, you know what all that is. And then in section 1, you're building the rear hull, the rear deck and the 2 hull sides. And the reason you build the rear deck before you put the front deck on will become apparent very quickly when you go through the next set of plans. Section 2 is to basically build the sections of the ship that are under the waterline, propeller shafts, mounts and props, and the rudder goes in section 1. And then you turn the page, and this is where you find out what's going on with the front deck, and this is where you start realising how much detail there is in this particular kit. In section 3 you build the walrus that goes inside the hangar, and the reason why there's only half a plane there is because really you can only see the rear of the wingtips, the tailplane assembly and the rear fuselage. You can't really see any more through the aperture of the hangar, on the hangar deck on the ship. And in section 4 you build the rear section of the superstructure, which encompasses X turret. And then in section 5 you're building the foredeck and all these little bits and bobs that go under the foredeck prior to putting the foredeck in place. And there are movable access covers, rotating torpedo tubes, and a number of boats and other detail that goes inside the ship. And then the actual deck itself, I'll show you the deck in a minute. The deck is really detailed, and I would strongly recommend you paint this deck before you put it onto the ship. It states here that you're painting the entirety of the inside of that hangar deck. Well, I wouldn't worry about that, just paint the back section, because you're not going to see any more than the back section anyway. You can't see through any more of that section of the ship, and the only parts you can really see is the back of the aircraft. All that then goes in section 5. You've got the stands that go together in section 5 as well, and then you've got some rear details that go onto the stern of the ship. There's some few davits there. There's some are they mine laying equipment? I'm not quite sure 100%. There's a capstan and a rear flagpole there that goes in section 6. A couple of stairs. Section 7 and 8 are the gun turrets, all 4 of them. One of them is slightly different because it actually houses an anti-aircraft gun, and I think it goes on B turret. Section 9, you've got lots and lots and lots of little bits of detail that go into the ship's decking there. A turret goes into position. There's a flag capstans on a flagpole at the front of the bow, and there's anchors and loads of stuff going on. Little Oerlikons, they're 37mm Oerlikons, and a number of other items like lifeboats that go on lifeboat carriers that actually bolt onto the side of the ship. And this kit is very, very detailed, as you're becoming aware of, but just looking through the actual ship's plans you can see how much detail is in this ship. 10 is the hangar deck, and that's the back part of the hangar sub-assembly, which will go into the back of the hangar deck that way round. And that's why you can see that all you're going to see is the aperture there, and that's filled up with aircraft, so you know you're not going to see an awful lot in the hangar deck. Section 11 is the bridge, and the forward section of the superstructure, and some of the radar and antenna equipment there, searchlights, whatnot. There's other bits of bobs of radar and a couple of machine guns, anti-aircraft mounts there, which go in place, and that's section 11. Section 12 is to build the Walrus spotter plane, and then section 13 is to put everything into place, including B turrets mount and the forward section of the deck there. There's a number of boats that go in place, and the foremast that goes into position behind the bridge. Section 14 are, section 14, 15 and 16 are basically sub-assemblies, and section 17 is to put all those sub-assemblies in place with other minor details as well. And they all go into place in section 17. It's quite easy to follow. Section 18 is a lot of other further detail. You've got the I can't remember what size guns. Are they 3-inch or 4-inch anti-aircraft dual-purpose guns? I can't remember. And you've got some other launches and launch mounts there. More stairs that go into place, 219 and 220 are more stairs. And then you've got section 19 and 20 are the rear sections of decking and superstructure with a rear mast there. And these two pom-pom installations. The pom-poms were a terrible, absolutely useless weapon, but the Royal Navy used them throughout the war. God knows why. Section 21 are the two funnels, stacks as they're often called in the Navy. Section 22 and 23 are two lifeboat, they're inflatable dinghy sub-assemblies. And in section 24, you're basically putting all of those sub-assemblies into place, including the two funnel stacks. And these, again, I don't know what these are. It would be quite interesting to find out what these are actually. And a few other steps and bits and bobs, and then X and Y turret goes into place. And that completes the build of the kits in 24 stages. And then when you actually look at the paint and colour guide, you can see how detailed this kit is, because it is absolutely festooned in detail. Guns, boats, sub-assemblies, life rafts, all sorts of stuff. The other thing that's interesting that I have noticed on HMS Belfast is that she has two sets of davits at the back here, and I'm pretty sure it's the only model ship Airfix build where they put davits on the ship but no boats. Pretty sure that's true. So that's the paint guide. They're giving you the paint numbers there and the Humbrol paint range. And this colour scheme is the colour scheme that the ship wore for D-Day. Alright, so if you want the D-Day colour patterns, there they are in their full glory. So that's the instructions. There's no decals on this kit, so that makes it a little bit easier. The ship's serial number, Royal Naval ID number, was C35. C standing for cruiser, obviously. And she was the 35th cruiser to be commissioned in the Royal Navy at that time. Now then, I'm going to get these screws out, because what I want to do is I'm not going to go pedantic through the parts, but I'm just going to show you very briefly what I mean by the detail and the quality of the cut-ins on this ship. There's a little lifeboat in there. There's a set of bridge windows and one of the anti-aircraft GP guns. They're the only loose parts in the kit that I can see. Everything else is on sprue. I don't know why that's doing that, but it has. Right, everything else is on sprue. There's a loose sprue there which I think used to contain one of the ship's hulls. So what I want to quickly do now is just show you the detail that you get on the ship's hull. Now I know Airfix Ship kits are pretty much of a muchness in terms of detail, but the quality of the actual build on this kit is quite nice. It's a nice smooth finish on the ship's hull. Can you see that? And the ledge you get inside to put the deck into place is quite nicely pronounced. So it should go together quite well. I remember building this kit before when I was a teenager, and I do remember it did go together quite well, but I found it incredibly fiddly. But of course I use tools nowadays to put fiddly parts onto a kit, especially ships, where tweezers are very, very important. I'll just put the other hull in there, you don't need to see the other hull. Here's the rear deck. Now the rear deck has got some nice planking details there, which is quite nice. And there's lots of holes and lots of bits and bobs that go on here and there. Not too much detail there going on. But the rear of the stern there's a little bit of nice bit of decking going on. I like the look of that. The detail in this kit is superb. As I said before, in my opinion, it's one of the best Airfix 1600 scale ships for your accuracy and detail. And there are a lot of parts. 250 in all. This is the fore section of the deck. There's lots going on underneath as well, because this kit actually has two runners there. Can you see the one underneath? And those are the fitting rails for the movable covers that reveal the torpedo tubes that also rotate. Nice planking detail there. There's a section in the midships of the kit here which has no planking detail, and that's because that is an armoured midship deck. Can you see that? And then forward of the deck you've got planking and the forecastle detail there, which is quite sharp as well. That will come up nice too. Nice looking mouldings, really nice. I like the look of that. Now then, I'll just quickly go through some of the parts. I'm not going to pedantically go through some of the parts because a lot of parts look like a lot of parts, but here's the Walrus spotter plane. Can you see how intricately detailed that is? That fuselage is really nice. The one above it is the one that goes inside the hangar, so that doesn't need to be as detailed as the other one. The wings are nicely moulded. Very, very nice looking Walrus spotter plane there. There's the tail plane. Can you see it? It's really nicely moulded. Both of those are identical looking parts. You've got the crane machinery there. Very nice. You've got some porthole details on some of the side sections to the superstructure. Hoping it's going to come in there. You can just see it there. That. And then you've got some other detailed small parts, some davits, searchlights. They're nicely moulded. The parts on this kit are very, very nice and crisp. These are the turrets and some more decking. The lifeboats, they're nicely crafted as well. I always think Airfix did quite a nice lifeboat. You know, the crafting on their little launchers were quite nice. And the turrets, you can see the turrets here. The three turrets there, and that one that houses the anti-aircraft gun position, that goes in B turret position. And then you've got all these lifeboats, and they're actually quite nicely moulded as well. I'm hoping yeah, it is, it's coming in lovely. And I think that part at the end is actually the Walrus's propeller. Can you see that? Is it going to come in focus? Just about. There we go, that's the Walrus's propeller. Some decking details for the tops of the superstructure here and there. Quite nice. I like the way this kit is moulded. It's been moulded very, very nicely. I used to have a lot of issues with crane jibs because I always found them a bit chunky and not very nice looking. And Belfast crane jibs, they look okay, don't they? They're quite sharp and crisp. That's the hangar deck end. There's some other bits and bobs here. I'll turn this on that bit to need to turn it over. That's the top of the bridge. And that's the top of B turret's position. Some other bits and bobs, the funnel stacks there, they're all there. There's the general purpose mounts for the anti-aircraft general purpose guns, and some other detailed parts there and there. Can you see how detailed some of these little parts are? I mean, look at those little 20mm anti-aircraft mounts. They're really, really nice. I like the look of those very much so. So that's that sprue. I don't want to pedantically go through all of this for you, you know. I just want to show you basically what some of the parts look like. There's the Oerlikons, 37mm Oerlikon guns, anti-aircraft mounts. There's the propeller shaft holders, there's the pom-pom mounts. There's the GP guns that go in those smaller turrets. Some bits and bobs there. There's the mast, they're nice and crisp. And some other, let me turn it over to show you the decking details there. Stand mounts and bases, and whatever those things are. They're obviously some sort of cover, or maybe armoured protection for the gun turrets. Interesting, for the small gun turrets rather. Very interesting. I like the look of the parts on this kit. I'm very excited to be doing this particular model. This particular model, of course, is one of my diorama projects for the D-Day diorama buddy build that Martin Lamont's doing in America. So very, very thankful for you for inviting me into that, Martin. And this is one of the build kits that I'll be doing a diorama with. I'll be doing a diorama of this ship. Not quite sure the state of how the diorama will be, whether she'll be firing her guns or whether she'll be preparing to fire her guns. I'm not sure. Probably preparing to fire her guns, because to be honest with you, I'm not that good. But yeah, I think the inbox review, the look of the parts and everything, it gives people an idea that HMS Belfast is a really nice looking 1/600 scale ship kit. Now then, what I wanted to quickly do, I don't know why I can never get the instruction leaflet back into this kit. Let's put it underneath the cardboard strip, and then it might go a bit in better that way. There we go, that's better. Right, I'll just leave you the box so you've got something to look at whilst I'm doing the gump on this particular kit. Now then, I just want to read you out the bits and bobs that I've got. The kit inbox review is on the Airfix HMS Belfast. Her release date was 1973, her serial number was 04212, and she was released in 1/600 scale. The dimensions of the ship are 12.5 inches long by 1.5 inches wide by 3.5 inches high, excluding her stand, so she'll probably stand another half an inch, making her about 4 inches high on her stand. The kit comprises of 250 grey plastic parts on 7 sprues, and there are a couple of options and costs. In 1/700 scale, there are no prices that I can definitely guarantee at the moment, but the majority of other 1/700 scale ships that are released by Trumpeter are usually for sale in the shops at between 20 and 30 quid. The 1/600 scale HMS Belfast it's a bit of an enigma, and I don't understand why. She's one of the best Airfix 600 scale ships on the market, and yet she's often one of the cheapest to acquire. I've seen this kit sell for as little as £3.50. It often sells for about 10 quid, but you can sometimes get it on eBay being offered for between 20 and 25, but I have also seen it sell for as much as 20. The release kit price, I think, is about £25 in the shops by Hornby. The 1/350th scale Trumpeter HMS Belfast is between £35 and £75. Now then, conclusions. This is almost certainly Airfix's best 1/600 scale model ship in terms of detail and accuracy, and as such would be a no-brainer recommendation every time. I would recommend this kit to all levels of modelers, whether you're just coming into the game, whether you've been building for years and years and years, whether you're a hardened modeler. I would recommend this kit every time. It's beautiful. As I said before, I've built this kit before, and I was absolutely awed by the quality and the detail on this kit. It is phenomenal. Now then, the mouldings and the fine crispness to the small installations are second to none, with only probably the 1/350th scale Trumpeter kit being of better quality. The ship is a replica of Belfast prior to her 1953 refit, so she is perfect for any combat diorama. The odd thing about HMS Belfast as a kit is that on the second-hand market she can be bought for sometimes as little as a couple of pounds, making her the cheapest of Airfix model ships to acquire. But not only is she the cheapest, she's also one of the best. So if you fancy an HMS Belfast, honestly, opt for the Airfix kit. It's beautiful. And I hope this video has been of some use. All you guys out there, some of my new subscribers that have come on, thank you very much. I really appreciate the subscriptions, and I hope this video has been of some use. I hope all your modelling projects are going smooth, and I'll see you for the next video. Thank you very much, lads.